So Yvonne Stennett, Executive Director of Community League of the Heights. I've been at the organization since July 16, 1979. I have lived in Community Board 9 since 1982. Proud mother of 4 and grandmother of 7. You know, my story is a little bit of divine intervention. I was a young mom and was looking for work. Things were desperate at the time, and literally caught a flyer blowing in the wind that was advertising the position for a property manager or director of property management. And I had previously worked for Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Corporation out in Brooklyn doing property management, so it seemed as if it was the ideal position. So I ran around the corner. I was living on 157th Street between Amsterdam and Broadway at the time, and I ran around the corner to a very creaky building at 508 West 159th Street, where the Community League, this organization, was headquartered. And I ran up the creaky stairs to the founder of the organization, Mrs. Lucille Bulger, a queen, an absolute visionary of a woman, God rest her soul, who had started the organization back in 1952, her along with some of the parents. And I went upstairs and I presented myself and showed her the flyer and that I was, coming for this position. And she sat me down and in a very grandmotherly voice, she said, "Young lady, I'm very sorry to inform you that the position was just filled this morning." At which point in time I felt comfortable enough to start crying. That's how desperate my own personal situation was at the time. And she gave me her little talk, and we sat there for about an hour, and then she said, "God bless you, and I wish you well." And I left and went home and I cried a little bit more, because I really needed the job. And lo and behold, the next morning the phone rang, and I heard this voice on the end, and she said, "Young lady, I wish to see you within the hour." Of course, I dropped everything, almost dropped one of my kids, and I ran around the corner, and she sat me down. And she said to me, "After speaking with you, I see something in you that I don't even know you recognize. And I want to give you an opportunity." And I cried again. Wow. And she said, "There's a position that I want you to take on, and I think you can do it." She says, at that point in time, the organization was working with a lot of young people. And she said, "I want you to work with these young people, and I want you to teach them Robert's Rules of Order." I had no idea what Robert Rules of Order was. But of course I said, "Of course, I can do it." Mm-hmm. And she said, "Okay, I want you to start the next morning." And I ran home, made sure my son was settled in, and I ran to the bookstore, the library actually, and I got a copy of Robert's Rules of Order, checked it out at the library, went home and stayed up the night reading it so I could understand what this was all about. Robert's Rules of Orders is basically the orders and the rules by which you carry out meetings and how you organize meetings and structure them. And the organization was at that point in time in charge of a youth advisory council. So my task was to come in and teach these young people, I wish I was 1, 2 at the time, teach them how to properly conduct meetings, how to make resolutions, how to form votes, and the likes. But also embedded in that work was helping them to develop their self-esteem, helping them to learn how to research, get funding, figure out how to make whatever cause they were committed to strong enough so they could build a case around it to advocate for it. And that was my entree into Community of the Heights. I do say that it was divine intervention. And the just belief in me of this woman to think that I was valuable and that I could be much more than I thought I could be at the time. So back in 1952, when the parents got together, headed up by Mrs. Bulger, her and their idea was to create a community that would be reflective of a place where young people could grow, develop, and have the right resources to help them to become better human beings. They also wanted to be able to expose the young people to life outside of their community. So they started doing sleepaway camps, very much like the Fresh Air Fund. They got in touch with families that lived outside, and they would connect the children to those families. In the neighborhood, they started creating after-school programs so they could help the young people to develop their academic work. And they also created what they called BABs, which was backyard alleyways and streets, and it really was about community beautification. Let us start making the community in which we live better than what we found it. So, and that incorporated not just young people, but the entire community. Over the years, the insight and the vision of Mrs. Bulger in particular grew, and she started recognizing that it was more than just the recreational aspect or the educational aspect of the young people that we needed to address, but that we really needed to address every aspect of life. Everything, whether it was housing, nutrition, health, anything that affected their ability to grow, to develop, to flourish. And so the organization over the years has really blossomed into a multi-service organization. Mrs. Bulger, she was with us until 1994, and during those times, that was prior to my becoming the executive director, she actually started looking at housing as a very tangible thing to allow the organization to start making an impact in. Our first entree into the world of housing was basically doing weatherization. So we contracted with the state. They would come in, shore up a building in terms of making sure the windows and everything were fortified, so we would get adequate heat being able to be maintained in the units. And then I'm fast forwarding a little bit into the 70s, when we actually got into the hardcore construction and revitalization of buildings. There was an exodus during the 60s and 70s of those private landlords who had owned many of the properties. They lived, of course, out in the islands and so forth, and based on the changing demographics, their quote-unquote care for those buildings were not as attentive as they once were, so the buildings were deteriorating. And we were having an exodus of many of the populations that had been here. And of course, you still had a strong African American population. And you were developing a more varied Latino population. So of course, minorities were in, others were out, buildings deteriorating, and some of the other aspects, whether it's sanitation, food, and all of that, was going downhill. So we started doing the housing, but of course, as I said, having this kind of comprehensive look at what it really takes to develop a healthy community, also started looking at the nutritional needs of the children, of the health needs of the children. So in the 70s, we did establish a clinic we partnered, and this was at that point in time, it was an OBGYN gynecological clinic that was partnered with Columbia Presbyterian or New York Presbyterian Hospital to service a lot of the teenagers, but also all women and men at the time, but primarily around GYN and male sexual services or sexually related services. During that time also, we opened up a food pantry to deal with the needs of the food. And we kind of fashioned our after-school programs so that it not only provided the academic support services, but it also had a nutrition component built in. We partnered with Cornell Extension Program to make sure that we were delivering to the children information and resources around the preparation of healthy meals and how to, at the same time, be economic using the very few dollars that they had to prepare good meals, healthy meals. So a lot of that was going on in the 70s and the 80s. And then in the 90s, I think we started formalizing all of this into a real strategic, kind of comprehensive look at what the organization was doing, is doing. And now we're in 2015, where the organization has developed over 1,500 units of affordable housing. We have a food pantry that services over 900 packaged meals per week. We have a technology center that provides training for home health aid certification, as well as computer classes, both advanced, beginners, and intermediate. We have this block, actually, where the office is located on, and where we're sitting right now, on 159th Street, is the oldest police athletic play street in the city. So during the months of July and August, the street is completely closed to traffic, and you can find 200 to 300 children playing in the street, structured games at any given time, and that usually culminates in our annual health festival, which provides health screening for about 350 children on that day. We provide food, activities, games, but key to that is that we do follow up. The pediatricians from New York Presbyterian perform the health screenings, and we follow up to make sure that the young people are getting the care based on the screenings, that they are going to the right clinic, that they're doing all of that. We've made some changes in the year, and starting from 2000. One of the things that we have always wanted to do, and has been kind of a dream for me, is to create, and the organization, I'm not alone, no man is an island, we do nothing by ourselves, is to really look at the creation of a community center. We were tired of seeing our young brothers standing on the corner, not having any place to go, not having a resource, not being able to offer jobs or offer any type of training, skill development. We also wanted to have a hub where young people could be able to go and take dance classes on a Saturday, or the brothers could play basketball during the night and get them off the corner, or if there is need for a GED or any kind of enrichment program, that this place would provide that. Well, we struggled for a little while with that idea, and the reason for the struggle is that anything and everything we try to do, we try to make sure that it's going to be sustainable, that we're not going to offer false hope by creating this idea and then, kind of daydreaming about it and then doing it in such a way where it's kind of a temporary fix and then it fails. That, to me, is so demoralizing to people who depend on and who need real services that are sustainable. Looking around at the many different models of community centers and realizing how many of them have failed because they were a dream, but not necessarily and there's nothing wrong with dreaming, but the dream is the start of it, but practical dollars and cents and all of that have to sustain that dream.
Right.
So we started evaluating ourselves, and we went back in time and we said, well, what are we good at? What have we been able to really be good at? What are our partners? What does our community really need at this point in time? We looked at the things that made us feel good about our community and things that didn't make us feel good about our community. One of them was we were dismayed, and maybe that's a kind way of putting it, with the education that our young people were getting, and the way that our elementary schools and schools in general was treating our children. Totally disagreed with the way that curriculum was being taught to our children, brought to our children. Totally annoyed with the fact that they were social promotions when our children really weren't ready to move on, but that no one was spending the time giving them the skills that they needed to get to be able to compete with other folks, and just kind of chucking them through the system, just numbers, not people. So that was something that really kind of stuck in our craw. And then we were also looking at the big 300-pound gorillas in the neighborhood, the hospital, the university, and saying to ourselves, well, they take a lot. What do they give? What are they really giving? And if that's the case, how do we then hold them accountable? People will get away with whatever you allow them to get away with. When you start holding people accountable, putting their feet to the fire, and they may be able to do something. So then we wanted to really have buy-in from our community. So what did they really want, and how do we get to know what they really want? We did a 2-year study about this. We did surveys. We met with parents. We met with teachers. We met with students. We met with the bankers. Everybody, asking them, what do you think we need in this neighborhood? Of course, a lot of them, libraries, better schools, better places for our young, things we knew, but things we wanted to have validated by our community. So that all led to us thinking about, okay, we do education really good. We're not happy with the schools. We know everyone needs a place that they can come to and get some quality services as well. We have a health clinic. Let's just kind of look at doing a real community school model where we are responsible to the school, the school is responsible to us, where we can find common ground and we can own this and really see something happen at the end of the day that we can measure and that we can chart its impact. And then it was like, yeah, but where do you get the money from, right? So it made sense on an economic level to partner with something that's not going to go away, our schools. As long as there is a quote-unquote seat need, as long as there is a steady stream of funding that goes through the government and goes through city, and which is our taxes, then why not create a school, but do it in such a way, it's going to address the need for the quality education, it's going to address all of the other services, if we can carefully package it in such a way that we create memorandum of understandings so that the services that we're looking for, where the brothers can play in the gym, where mothers can go and get some courses on how to rear their children, where dads can go and be able to find out what it is to be a good father, where our immigrant population can get English as a second language, where the young ones who haven't graduated can go back and get adult education so they can get their high school equivalency, where all of this can happen. So we said, okay, we partnered with New Visions, and we partnered with the Board of Education, and we created the school proper, and we started doing a lot of fundraising. We brought in our local elected officials. We brought in Columbia, the university, and the hospital, and told them that they needed to partner with us on this. And partnering meant you open up the hospital and the university so our young people can go inside and see the vast array of career opportunities that are available beyond doctors and nurses. You can do social worker technician, you can do the lab work, you can be an engineer, you can be anything within the health field. So they said yes. Also meant give them some internships, give them some mentoring opportunities, right? Real things, tangible things that can be measured, right? And every now and then give us some money so that we can operate some programs that are beneficial to the young people. And they agreed to do that. So brought all of those folks together, and we raised, the organization raised approximately $7 million. The rest of the money was attributed to the School Construction Authority because they had monies for the creation of a high school. We had only one high school in Washington Heights for a very long period of time, and that was George Washington. It was only until within the last 10 years that another high school was created, but it is a specialized high school for the newly arrived immigrants, and that's Luperon. But there was no other. So all of our children are being bussed out or trained out to go to other areas for high school. So we had a very good argument for the creation of another high school in our neighborhood. And as I said, we really, God is good, we really took time to think through this and to be able to have all our arguments so that we wouldn't meet up against all these brick walls that are usually formed against you when you're trying to do something right. So we, at the end of the day, we were able to build a school building, a $52 million school building that represents quality education, a place for our community members to find recreational activities, educational activities, and to be able to have a safe place to have conversations and to be able to find other resources to help their needs. So we're very proud of it. Right now, it is the school is grades 6 through 12. There's approximately 653 students that are there during the day. But I dare say in the evening when you go into the school, you can go to the classrooms and you will see English as a second language being taught to adults from the community. You can go to the gym and you will see a Zumba and health class going on. You go to the lunchroom and there is healthy family meals being prepared and taught. You go to the library and there's either studying going on or there's a quiet yoga class going on. We have just started an adult basic education class in order to move the young people towards getting their high school, and these are for folks who have dropped out of school, bringing them back to say you can get your high school equivalency diploma, we'll work with you on that. And then on Saturday mornings there's other exercises class and there's Saturday school. So I think we have created a safe, comfortable environment for people. and it's addressing a multiple of needs that has always been the dream of the organization to create.